I'm Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. In today's Tuesday Tone Tip, I want to show you 3 of my favorite advanced amp tweaks in the Axe-Fx III and FM3. A lot of the time when people ask me, what should I tweak in here to get more out of the amp block, I just kind of simply recommend don't. Just stay on the Authentic page. There are over 200 amp models, loads of cabs, loads of drive pedals. You can just treat these like regular, everyday, old school amplifiers. But in the case you do want to kind of dive in and really fine tune your tones, these are the 3 parameters that I find are not only my favorite, but some of the most powerful when it comes to tone shaping. So let's get started. I've got my Hamer Standard plugged into my Axe-Fx III, and I've got the Friedman BE V1 model dialed up. It sounds like this at the moment. That kind of illustrates the point I was talking about earlier. You basically don't have to touch anything on these and they sound fantastic. All I did was turn the input drive down a tiny little bit. Now, one thing that I love to do with a crunchy amp like this is to boost it with a drive pedal so I can get some more sustain and saturation, especially when I'm playing leads, but also as a tone shaping tool to kind of tighten up and smooth out the character of the distortion. On something like the Axe-Fx II or the AX8, you would need to use a drive block in front of the amp to do this, but we can do that using the preamp boost in the amp block. So let's go to the preamp tab, and in the bottom right, you can see we have 3 input boost controls. We've got the input boost on and off, we've got the boost type and the boost level. So let's just kick this on. The stock standard boost type is the neutral boost, which just corresponds to the boost switch on the older generation products. It gives you a flat gain boost. And more gain is always a wonderful thing, right? But a really popular technique is to take something, say like a tube screamer pedal in front of a real amp, set the drive to 0 and crank the level all the way up. So you're not really using it to add more distortion, you're more using it as a pre-EQ. And if we select, say, the T808 boost type in here, it's emulating those settings with the drive on 0, and basically we have the boost level as our level control. If I pull that up, what this is going to do is provide that signature tube screamer mid hump. It's also going to attenuate some low end and high end going into the amp, and it is glorious. And that has a very different character to, say, just turning up the drive control on the amp. So that's purely using the input drive. Let's try the preamp boost. You can hear there's a different character going on in the distortion. It's not necessarily better or worse, it's just different. And I kind of use this on all of my lead tones. It's a really great way as well. Say if we take something like the FAS Modern, which I've got at the stock settings at the moment. Let's have a listen. Let's go to the Authentic page, turn the drive down a little bit, and I'm going to use the grinder boost and really crank the level. This is going to tighten it up even more. That's glorious. I really like the grinder boost as well. And for something, again, like the Friedman, I actually really like the CC boost in the amp block for leads. not only is it giving me more gain, it's giving me some more mid-range, and it just kind of feels so good to play. So using the input boost is a great way to get more out of the amp block. And if you want to turn this on and off, simply right-click this and set the source as a control switch. You can then set one of your FC controller foot switches to be that control switch and toggle it on and off. Alternatively, if you use scenes, you can use the control switch per scene. For example, scene 1 and 2, I have the input boost off, and scene 3 and 4 will automatically turn it on. You can also set the status to be last. So if you're using that physical foot switch, each scene will just remember what the last setting was. So that's a very powerful way to go about that. Let's take a look at a cleaner amp though, because in a similar way to the way I always use that preamp boost just to kind of get a character I like out of the distortion, if I take something like, say, this Deluxe Verb vibrato model, I'll go to the neck pickup of this guitar, got a really sweet edge of breakup tone going on. So when I hit hard, it breaks up. When I play softly, it's nice and clean. But there is a level discrepancy there, and that can be hard to deal with unless you use the output compressor. So if we go to the Dynamics tab, let's just start by setting the stock output comp to about 2.5. And like its name suggests, this is just going to place a compressor right at the end of the stage of the amplifier, so that essentially when I'm playing harder, it's going to attenuate it slightly. And when I'm playing softer, it's basically not going to work as hard. So it's going to level out the difference between those two. Let's hear that. It's also going to change the tone a little bit, but I kind of like that. It basically fattens everything up. So if you're somebody who loves to play with clean or edge of breakup tones, don't overlook the output compression in the amp block. Let's go back to that wonderful Friedman tone we had before, and we're going to look at the last parameter. It is in the speaker tab, and it's the speaker impedance curve in here. So a couple of firmwares ago, I want to say it was firmware 11, the Axe-Fx III got this advanced speaker impedance modeling. It's the only device on the market which does this. And now we have a whole selection of different impedance curves from different cabinets. To be clear, these are not cabinet IRs. They're not going to filter out your tone the way a cabinet IR does. This is basically emulating what the output of an amplifier sees. For example, if you could take a 100-watt Friedman and connect it to a 4x12 Friedman cab, it would see a particular impedance. However, if you connected the same amp to, say, like a 1x12 greenback speaker, don't do this either unless you want to blow stuff up, it would see a totally different speaker impedance. And this is more than anything kind of like a feel parameter. You know, if you really want to cop that amp in the room tone, especially when you're playing with a real cabinet, you can match it using one of these impedance curves. So the stock Friedman impedance curve I think sounds really good, but we can cycle through a few different ones. One of my favorites is this 4x12 recto straight, which you can see has a much lower resonant frequency, and it's got this really big kind of bass boost happening here. I'm going to turn the input boost back on, so I won't use a control switch. I'll just leave it on permanently because I was really liking that. And let's just have a listen to a few different speaker impedance curve selections. I'm going to pin this up here and we can just click through. So we'll hear the 4x12 recto straight. the difference in tone there isn't as massive as, say, using a different input boost, the difference in feel is really noticeable. And you can go one of two ways with this. You can stick to the authentic choices. For example, if you're using, say, a Friedman amp and a stock Friedman cabinet, go with the Friedman factory impedance curve. It kind of makes sense. That would be the way the real amp and real cabinet would interact. However, for me, I just like to use the one that I like the sound and the feel of best. For example, this 4x12 5153 impedance curve sounds and feels really good with the Friedman amps, which, may not be a totally authentic choice, but that's also why I like the Axe-Fx III. We're not limited to those authentic choices. We can have them, but we can go far beyond them and just find the sound and the feel that suits whatever we're in the mood for at any particular time with any particular tone. So they're three of my favorite advanced amp parameters. I hope you find them really useful in your quest for ultimate tone. If there's any particular amp parameters that you really like to tweak, please let me know in the comments. If you want to reach out, you can find me on my YouTube channel. I'm just Leon Todd there, and I'm Leon_Ragdoll on Instagram if you've got any further questions. Thanks so much for watching the video. I'll see you all next time.